Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be speaking to you today on a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that is about advanced analytics in finance. So let's set some context. Recent developments in data and analytics presents a clear call to action to finance leaders to define the analytics agenda. Why is that? And that's because finance occupies a unique position within the company based on these characteristics. Finance has broad organizational scope, affinity for fact-based decision making. Hopefully everybody goes to finance asking for the right kind of decisions based on facts. Finance is an objective and credible organization, and historically it's been a steward of information for the company, and it often serves as a focal point for enterprise performance management. So today, topics I will cover are about what are some top priorities of CFOs. Then we talk a little bit about key challenges that finance must overcome in establishing advanced analytics. Want to define what advanced analytics means in the context of finance and business operations. Then what kind of new capabilities and how to get started. And a proposed roadmap for FP&A, which helps shape the implementation stages, and then developing new skill sets, new talent, and role alignment within finance in support of advanced analytics. And then managing change and some suggestions to next steps. A recent Gartner study identified 10 trends for finance to navigate now. And I thought the first 3 trends are very appropriate for today's discussion. I'm not going to go through all the 10, but the first 3, especially looking at finance having long been data-driven, but the availability of big data and the growth of data analytics capabilities have further heightened its importance around digital demand for decision-ready data and centralization of finance analytics. So let's look at what CFOs are saying about their top priorities. I have shared 2 surveys. On the left of the screen is Gartner 2020 Agenda Poll, which showed top 3 priorities as being finance analytics, finance organization strategy and structure, and then finance technology optimization. And Leithwaite Global CFO Survey, not too different as well, right? You're looking at data and analytics, digital transformation, cost management. While these surveys were done pre-pandemic, if anything, the consequences of the pandemic have heightened these priorities. With remote and distributed workforce, self-service business intelligence and collaborative business intelligence becomes more critical, and data-driven decision modeling and in order to aid businesses to make the right decisions has become even more essential. So finance transformation takes many initiatives and many shapes. And this is another interesting survey results. And not surprising, with sharp focus of CFOs across industries on cost management and efficiency improvements, it's not surprising that operational excellence and automation have the highest penetration of current initiatives. As you can see, they are anywhere between 70% to 80% here. But the next big thing is artificial intelligence and machine learning. As a matter of fact, 50% of CFOs are utilizing data quality and data science in today's operations, in their current operations, and nearly everyone is aiming to do so in the next few years. And again, this tied back to the Gartner trends. This ties beautifully to trend number 2, which is demand for decision-ready data. And one of the things that you'll hear consistently in my presentation is access to the right kind of data at the right time is a foundational requirement for data analytics. An opportunity here is creating a sufficient source of truth from a single source. And as a matter of fact, a study that was done by Gartner in 2018 showed that companies that have been able to create that single source of truth have been able to get up to 40% better results and better decisions as a consequence of single source of truth. So what are some of the challenges finance must overcome in order to be able to establish an effective advanced analytics capability? There are essentially 3 of them. One is oftentimes finance waits for the businesses to come to them with a business challenge instead of proactively going after some of the important analysis that can help the business drive value in their organizations. Second one is that current finance competencies and tools are often inadequate for the requirements of advanced analytics. Over reliance on spreadsheets, disparate systems, lack of visualization data, all are some of the examples of inadequate capabilities. And last one is again this disjointed way that finance analytics often takes shape from the rest of the organizations, and the analysis that the finance does isn't always the ones that are consistent with what the businesses are reviewing. And this disjointed disconnect creates significant challenges in the buying of the organization around the types of analytics outside of the traditional finance analytics that the businesses can rely on finance. So to combat these challenges, finance leaders must define advanced analytics as a opportunity in their own organization, and they need to really understand the various kinds of advanced analytics, and then what are the ones that they want to make sure they are world-class, and then what are the things that they want to make sure that it becomes a table stake of their organization. Second one is the need for redefining and skilling the in support of the advanced analytics. The more things get automated and work changes, the role of the finance analysts and finance professionals changes to become one of more high value add activities versus transactional types of activities. One of the things that we looked at in one of my previous companies was that when we looked at the distribution of the type of work that is done, over 72% of the time, most finance, especially in the FP&A area, spend their time on data collection, data scrubbing, and preparing the reports. And they don't have enough time to really create insights and get underneath the what the data is telling us, the so what of it, and the root cause analysis and creation of the insights for the business in order to be able then use that those reports to drive the business strategy. With the advent of digitization, cloud computing, and advanced analytics tools, the role of the finance will be shifted, and the aim should really be that you would only spending a small portion, 10 to 15% of the time, on data collection, and the majority of the rest of the time you're spending on insights creation and value creation for the business. And to do that, you really need to look at your finance analytics target operating model. What is the best organizational design to drive advanced analytics across the organization? And target operating model should really be based on the size and culture of the organization. There are multiple different types of models, and I will be talking about a model that I have found to be most effective, and that is around the creation of a centers of excellences and a hub and spoke kind of a target operating model. So let's define what we mean by advanced analytics in finance. And I like this definition that Corporate Executive Board has defined, and that is the advanced analytics is the semi-autonomous or autonomous exploration of data using specialized techniques to complement traditional accounting and financial analysis. And so if you kind of start looking at the ecosystem of data and data analytics, we look at complexity of data, which is around structured data as the least complex, to a more complex one, which is the use of both structured and unstructured data. And specialization of knowledge required to drive analytics comes from being on the low end on the functional expertise. So you become a domain expert in accounting, in finance, in marketing. But as you mature on your analytics, your specialized analytics expertise gets to a point where you can become a multi-faceted analytics organization that can address any myriad of business questions. So in the more traditional use of data, where we look at static project return analysis, for example, where they will look at dynamic project discounted cash flow, which helps determine the value of investment based on its future cash flow. And this is typically a very simple simulation. You don't need advanced tools, and it's very much of a commonplace. However, we've learned that machine learning can generate better forecasts, and based on the data that can be used both historically and concurrent data. And on unstructured data, with big data opportunities is greater to use of unstructured data. So you take the structured financial data and marry it with marketing, human resource, strategic, customer feedback, and you can then create a analytics that is much more integrated and bring in more predictive analytics, such as customer profitability analytics, new market entry, simulation analysis. And today, in today's environment, one of the most critical analysis is the forecast of liquidity at the forefront of the metrics modeling. And it's not a surprise that companies are trying to predict how the economy is moving, and then what do they need to do to safeguard and take advantage of that. So looking at problem that we looked at now, how do you create the process to get to advanced analytics? And the process of identifying and starting the advanced analytics starts by truly understanding the business problem. And it can be a myriad of issues. So, and in building the capabilities of the organization, you want to start with one or two critical business issues that can be used as use cases and a platform of learning for the advanced analytics team in order to be able to create value based on the business problem, and then learning what kind of a data sets they need in order to bring in that information in accessible current data, and then use the relevant and advanced analytics techniques, whether it is machine learning, artificial intelligence, to examine the data set and to be able to create the types of analytics that we want. So one example is that we looked at was the high spend on promotional activities. The business challenge was spending a lot of money on promotional activities, but we're not really getting the rate of return on that one. And we looked at whole data sets of Amazon EC2 to run dozens of simulations per day, processing but 16 terabytes of sales data from promotional campaigns. And based on the analysis that we were able to create, we created insights around how you can be more customer focused in the types of promotions that you're creating, how you can customize the promotions to the demographic at the specific geography, which is very different from another geography, and then how you run these promotions so that one size does not fit all. And just by doing that, this company was able to save over $900,000 on promotional and trade spend. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how you think about setting up the process. Again, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? What is the right data sets that you need to have? And then what are the right analytics tools that you can bring in? And the more you move on the trajectory of your maturity, you bring in more of an integrated data. So you're not necessarily only looking at financial data, which tends to be focused on nonlinear regression, data mining and simulation, but bring in more of an integrated data of structured and unstructured, and be able to leverage machine learning to create more advanced time series forecasting, leveraging neural networks, and then bringing in probability analysis into your data. So these new capabilities are around transactional financial application and analytical FP&A application, that modern cloud deployed FP&A applications are becoming a lot more commonplace, and finance can leverage those in order to drive the insights that they need to create for the businesses. So another example would be around reducing inventory costs, right? We modeled relationship between sales and weather data to optimize the supply chain. We also modeled in-store traffic and product at the SKU level churns. And then by use of predictive analytics, we were able to understand the implications of weather, for example, around the inventory, and we were able to save about $150 million from weather-related spoilage. And these are the kinds of analytics that would really create that bonding between finance and the business in solving common problems using advanced analytics. I thought to give you an illustration about the typical steps that I have found to be success factors of how an organization can stand up a analytics capabilities and then over time mature it. And these sequences are, in my view, are in a way that allows us to do two things. One is quickly establish the capabilities, and then at the same time do a lot of test and learn. And as we test and learn, then be able to improve the capabilities and then over time mature. And as you can see, start by really the cloud deployed FP&A applications. And we've talked quite a bit about throughout this conference, and I'm not going to get into the value of cloud deployment, but suffice to say that with cloud computing, access to data becomes much more easier and more current and more relevant. And creation of that data lake in the cloud would allow for the concept what we were talking about, self-service business intelligence and collaborative business intelligence. Once we have done that, and then move into next phase, which is around what capabilities do we want to bring in. And typically we want to start by really looking at more predictive analytics, right? So you want to solve a cash flow problem, for example, or a payment issue problem. What are some of the prescriptive analytics that needs to be looked at in terms of optimization? And then the next phase, as the organization has become more mature on the use of predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, then we can look at how machine learning can accelerate and enhance these analytics, and then how you can bring in AI's natural language processing and generation so that it can become your vision would be that the CFO on his tablet can ask questions through the use of natural language to understand why, for example, performance of a certain product in a certain market was lower or less than what the forecast for it was. And then what are some of the actions that need to be taken in order to correct that problem. So as we set up the analytics capabilities, one of the critical success factors is the roles and skills that are required in finance to run an effective advanced analytics capability. And as transaction processing becomes more commonplace, financial reporting, compliance becomes increasingly automated. We all learned through various presenters on robotics process automation. Essentially, robots are going to take away all the redundant activities or all the repetitive activities, low value activities, and it will create the capacity in the organization, especially finance organizations tend to be slim in terms of resources, that those resources can then be applied to do a higher value work, which is around creations of insights and creations of data-driven decision-making processes. And the other thing that we need to really look at is that define the new role and skills needed, both in the current staff that exists in the organization, looking at their analytical capabilities, where they are, how do they need to improve that, where do they need to go in their trajectory of competencies, what kind of training do they need, how do you help them get to comfortable to becoming an advanced analytics steward and user and super users, as well as acquiring and fostering analytical talent, specializing in analytical tools, methods, and technology. And one of the things that I also have found is that finance needs to think broader than the traditional CPA and finance tracked hiring. They need to look at their talent much, much broader. And most importantly is hire people with critical thinking skills that can ask insightful questions, interpret the data, and draw sound conclusions, and be able to tell stories about what the data is, and take away the illusion of complexity and we don't understand what all these predictive modeling means, but really be able to talk about the results in a way that resonates with everyone around the organization. And one of the best ways to do that is through storytelling, through advocacy of data analytics. And that's a skill set that I think is very much needed and unfortunately hard to find in many organizations. So let's talk a little bit about the target operating model, as I mentioned, and that is around how do we want to make sure that the capabilities in the organization is designed in a structure that can be leveraged to its fullest potential. And as I said, there are many ways that you can come to what's the right solution for you. But think about these factors, that the front office paradigm is shifting towards shared service delivery and providing decision support for operational decision types is, for example, pricing, inventory renewals are typically is 2.5 times as effective as business generalist models at driving financially sound operational decisions. And another factor is finance should bridge the gap between the strategic and operational decision making with analytics. So those two data sets typically are disconnected and they need to become one singular source of truth. And then, armed with analytics, I think CFOs can exercise more centralized control of operational business decision making and become better partner to the C-suites. So the graphic on the right is a demonstration of how you could think about creation of an analytics COE center of excellence, where there is a central finance analytics COE, but then there's these hubs, there's spokes that based on the organization, if you're a global company or if you're a national company or if you're a product aligned company, you can create these spokes that supports geographies or products or customers, but they are being all tied to this financial analytics hub. And the value that you get from that is that you have standardized processes, you have high level of talent that can be leveraged across the organization, and you can translate analytics into business terms and use the business language to drive the compelling presentations that I was talking about through this model. And the next component, and we've heard this from other presenters, is really focusing on managing change. Building advanced analytics in an organization is like any other new capability. It requires a significant amount of change management, and obviously a lot of that comes from addressing these few questions to your organization very openly and very transparently. You know, people want to know, what will this data and analytics initiative mean for me and my function? You know, how is it going to change what I do? How will it make me more successful? You know, am I going to be relevant? You know, especially when people think of machine learning and artificial intelligence, the notion of relevancy becomes very, very central. And then will there be a place for me and my role in all of this? And you need to find the right answer for these questions in your organization. So I want to close my presentation by just sharing some things that you could do next when you go back to office. Pilot projects, and assess which of the following is more viable as a pathway to advanced analytics. You know, do you want to apply more sophisticated analytics to financial data, or do you want to go to the integrated financial and non-financial data? You know, depends on where you are on your journey. Consider beginning with a finance-owned decision or process. The reason for that is that if it's owned by finance, it's easier to manage stakeholders. And it's also faster to get to the outcomes. And that way, then you can market it internally across the organization. And then identify lists of pilot advanced analytics projects. You know, you're not going to set with just one. So you need to have an inventory of what you can do next, and create the partnership with IT and with businesses. And then leverage upgrades in core finance applications. So partner with IT and identify what are the capabilities that are within the organization, maybe something that they're looking at rolling out, or what are the things that vendors are bringing in, for example, in HTAP and IMC capabilities in the FP&A applications roadmap. I hope this was of value to you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Kamran, thank you very much for a very comprehensive and insightful presentation. Really enjoyed it. And thank you very much for joining us. And for sticking with the camera. So, if I may, I'd like to kick off the Q&A with a question that that springs to mind around how should finance or indeed the sort of CFO function support technology investment to improve data quality and access to analytics if it's as central as you would deem it to be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First, I think every project obviously needs to demonstrate a return on investment. And finance can start by looking at some of these data analytics requires a lot of upfront investment, and they may not necessarily yield ROIs in the way that the forecast may show, especially for organizations that don't have those capabilities. And therefore, there should be a little bit of a cushion in how much do we want to invest in this, and what is the level of risk that the company is willing to take, and then set those into the process of funding, and look at funding of these projects in a more comprehensive way, not just by what are you spending to stand it up, but what does it take as the organization matures over time, and how does the investment need to be aligned to the maturity of the advanced analytics in the organization. So one of the things we've done in some of the companies I worked with is essentially creating a similar model to a product rollout, right? You know that some products, for example, in credit cards, it takes 5 years for the product to become profitable, right? And so what's the amount of investment that you're taking, and then how are you looking at the return on an investment, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then adjusting your investments and adjusting your capability building based on what you're seeing the organization is gaining, which means a lot of governance and a tight alignment between finance, business, and IT in managing this. I think that 3 groups have to essentially be the steering committee and the governance board for advanced analytics and evaluation of investments.
Thank you, Kamran. I hope you found that answer useful, folks. David asks, can you talk about some of the change management challenges that you see, especially from the sort of people side, as finance organizations embark on adopting advanced analytics into their value chain?
Yeah, that's a good question. From a people side, what I found was, I guess, different types of people have different questions and different challenges and different apprehensions. So what I would encourage you to think about is identify the archetypes of the finance in your organization, and really leverage this great tool that marketing uses for customer centricity and customer experience, and that's by creation of the personas in the organization. So I'll tell you, one of the things that really resonated with a lot of finance people in my previous organizations was that they were spending, as I said, significant amount of time chasing after data, getting data centralized, loading data, making sure the data is accurate. If not, there's a go back and forth to ensure the data is accurate. And then using a lot of really simple tools, but arduous tools to integrate the data, and over-reliance on spreadsheets. And when you ask these highly talented individuals that you have gone and worked hard to attract to your organization, maybe they are from good business schools or have MBAs, they never imagined that they were going to come work for in their career to do data scrubbing and chasing data. And so when you tell them that we are going to automate that and change the process so that you're not spending 8 hours of the day to just do the data collection and data scrubbing and preparing the data, all that will be done by machines and robots. And what it's going to do is it's going to create capacity for you to be able to really get underneath what does the data tell me, and help you go home in a more reasonable time and spend time with your family and create that work-life balance, which oftentimes in finance, that's a very challenging value proposition. How do you create that work-life balance? That really creates a lot of excitement for the finance teams to get behind the project. The other thing is, like, get them involved. Don't turn this into a special project that's only run by a special group. So communication around, what are you doing? Discussions about the challenges that the company has, and getting people really involved in helping you come up with the ideas of solving these problems is very critical in engaging them. And another thing that we've done, which worked really well, was creation of these change ambassadors. These are people that we identified who are highly respected in organizations. They're peers of others, and people oftentimes like to hear what's going on from their own peers and are much more likely to get on board with a change initiative when they see their peers are involved with it. And these change ambassadors need a consistent set of communication and tools and time to be able to talk about what's going on. I like one of the presenters yesterday was talking about that you need to repeat this story, and you need to repeat and retell why you're doing this. And that is so true. I mean, it's how many times does it take for a message to get instilled? You need to say that over and over again. And as importantly, you need to demonstrate. And that demonstration comes from the senior leadership, that they are walking the talk, they are asking their questions, they are coaching their teams, and encouraging them to really go solve the complex problems, and giving them the opportunities to be able to demonstrate what value they can bring in if they have access to the self-service business intelligence and collaboration tools that advanced analytics can bring to the organization. I hope that answered the question. Brian? Hi, Brian, I'm not hearing anything from your side.
My apologies. I self-muted to stop, so my apologies, everybody.
Okay.
One final question from our end. As the traditional role of the CFO and their teams is changing, as the what was previously the sort of transaction processing, financial reporting, and compliance sort of heavy lifting part of the roles become increasingly automated. Obviously, you're going to face new challenges in looking at new ways of working. In your opinion, how should CFOs and their teams handle these new ways of working?
Yeah, so one of the critical things is to really examine what are all the things that occupies the time and resources of finance. And once you have identified that, then you look at it and say, as you automate, what goes away? And the other thing is, what are the capabilities and activities that you want finance to be doing? And oftentimes, it's about finance being at the table with business, with strategy, with marketing. and demonstrating that use of the advanced analytics has enabled finance to be broader than the traditional reporting of financials and external reporting and management reporting, but truly getting underneath the business needs and this data-driven decision-making capabilities of the organization. So create an inventory of activities that the new finance environment that is less burdened with mundane activities can create. And then once you have that, then it's a question of how do you partner, how do you collaborate, and more importantly is the collaboration and partnership with the businesses and with the other functions. Companies are complex organisms, and there are a lot of different issues that people deal with, and it shouldn't only be at the top of the house. You need to create that collaborative process between finance and businesses, finance and IT, finance and HR, throughout the whole organization, so that if you are working more collaboratively, cross-functionally, and spending time as a finance coming into these cross-functional projects, not just with the finance hat, but with the total business hat, and be ready to partner with the business to solve those problems, and create your reward and performance management system such that it demonstrates that you are rewarding your staff that are proactively seeking partnership with the business and are always thinking in a way that they're innovating and problem solving beyond the realm of the traditional finance.
Kamran, thank you so much for that. As I've outlined previously, please do continue the conversation online. Jose and Vijay have some threads running, and it'd be great to get your feedback. Kamran, thank you so much for joining us. It's super appreciated. Please enjoy the location, fabulous, and look forward to catching up in due course.
Thank you.
So everyone, that concludes this session at the conference. I am extremely pleased to say that next up is Heiko Witter from Rolls-Royce, who will be doing a top-level presentation on transformation opportunities in production use cases and opportunities in the aerospace industries. Definitely a presentation you do not want to miss. So please join us at the top of the hour. Look forward to hearing that presentation and continuing the conversation. Look forward to catching up with you shortly. This ends this section.